Thank you. So you know the Pulse of the Fashion Industry report is a collaboration between Boston Consulting Group, Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and the Global Fashion Agenda. When we first did this report in 2017, we did it because we wanted to qualify the discussion about sustainability in the fashion industry. We wanted to know more about which segments, price-wise or size-wise, were doing really well, and where do we want to see more progress. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years, measuring progress, using that knowledge also to guide the industry, and then calculating the business case, first for the world economy, last year for brands. So this year we've done something differently. We've been focusing on the consumers or the customers and seeing how can we guide brands in engaging with their customers on sustainability. So when Sebastian and we were up here last year, we were quite optimistic. We saw that many of the historically low-performing brands were actually improving a lot. It was really, it was good to see. Brands that previously we thought, okay, this will be really difficult for them, but they actually improved. And we saw the pace of improvement as very encouraging. We saw that actually if that pace had continued, we were on a path towards having a sustainable industry in the not too near future. So this year, the figures are more sobering. We still see an improvement, but we see that the pace of improvement has gone down by 30%. So if you compare that with the fact that towards 2030, the industry is projected to grow by 80%. That makes us worried that the gap between industry growth and the Pulse score will only increase. So that's why in this year's Pulse report, we have a really call to action, a strong call to action. We need action now. We do, however, also acknowledge that many of the frontrunners are doing amazing stuff. If you look back this year, we've seen, especially in terms of climate, really ambitious targets set on even becoming CO2 neutral. But even if the frontrunners make it and become even climate positive, this is not enough. We need the whole industry to join the playing field for the industry to become truly sustainable. But Sebastian, maybe you can tell us some of the details about the findings of this year's report.
Sure. And before we go into the details, what are the two most important messages? The first one is that the amount of fashion players who has achieved progress over the last 12 months has gone down from 75% to about 60%. So we are seeing less fashion players making progress. The result of that is that the pace of progress has slowed down. From 2018 to 2019, the Pulse score has only gone up by 4 percentage points. In the previous year, we have seen an increase of 6 percentage points. That means that this industry is still on its way to the important 50 percentage points mark, but not as fast as we thought, and therefore there is a need to speed up. But before we talk about the details, let me quickly remind you what the Pulse score is. The Pulse score is a global measure for the environmental and social performance of the fashion industry. It's based on the HIC Index brand and retail module and complemented by a survey and interviews across 100+ industry executives. So it's really a comprehensive and global measure for the performance of the industry. And like in the previous years, we have looked into the different segments of the industry. And with segment, I mean that we have looked into from the low price point up to the luxury segments, into the performance of those. And within those segments, we've tried to understand how are the companies of different sizes are performing. And the most important message is that company size still matters. The largest companies of each segment are still performing the best. However, the small ones are catching up. Especially the small and medium-sized companies in the entry price points are making significant progress and have notched up the scores, some of them by 18 percentage points and more. In the past years, that segment was the one that has seen the lowest scores across all. And sustainability seemed to be an afterthought for them. This is really encouraging, and this advancement is mainly coming from those companies putting strategies and targets in place and starting to implement proven practices that the frontrunners have shown them to be commercially viable. Undeniable, this is an important achievement which deserves our admiration. But at the same time, we all have to be realistic. That progress will not bring us to where we should be. There's a time gap between putting strategies in place and seeing measurable impacts. And therefore, we have to turn to the frontrunners. The frontrunners are the ones that have seen the highest scores in the past. But when looking into the most recent developments, they are making little to no progress in improving the pulse scores. This does not mean that those companies have dismissed their commitments or slowed down their efforts. On the contrary, those companies are more committed than ever. They are investing a significant amount of time and effort in scaling proven practices deeper into the value chain. At the same time, they are investing into new technologies, especially in areas of the supply chain in which the industry has not yet progressed. However, it's increasingly difficult for them to really make progress and leapfrog. There are existing boundaries, and it's difficult to open up new approaches in areas like end of use, alternative raw materials, and the like. All those attempts they're doing are well meant and might lead to success one day. But given the fact that this industry is growing at a rapid pace and the gap between footprint and achievement in terms of sustainability is widening, we are urging the industry to further increase the level of collaboration and joint innovation in order to leapfrog. And lastly, it also needs to be said that there is a segment in this industry that has not moved at all. Almost 20% of all garments produced are produced by factories and sold by traders that do not care at all about the topic of sustainability. Those rather small and unorganized marketplaces will likely not change behavior until the industry, in collaboration with the regulator, is coming up with minimum standards that will force those places to comply.
Thank you, Sebastian. So as said earlier on, the report this year is really about the call to action. And what we've done, we've divided that call to action into two performance segments. So one is the 40% of the industry. So this is companies who have started their work on sustainability but really need to accelerate. So our focus here on is for them to really have the resources in place, to have top management support, to have sustainability strategies that are aligned with the corporate strategies. So once that foundation is in place, they can start to really address what we coin the CEO agenda core priorities. So the good thing about these 40%, even though they haven't moved a lot, is that all the solutions are there ready to be implemented, right? So they tested, a lot of other companies have used them. So here the focus is on leadership. We need these companies to take leadership and to do it now. For the remaining 60%, these are companies that have been working on sustainability for many years. They're quite advanced. For them, the call to action is to accelerate what they're doing and take it even further to scale. And then also focus on the transformational priorities of the CEO agenda. So this is about closing the loop on our fashion system. It's about harnessing the potential of the fourth industrial revolution. So they need to take this leadership and do this, but they cannot do it alone. In isolation, there is a limit to how much they can do. So that's why in the call to action, we really call out the bigger ecosystem. We need them to take leadership as well and accelerate the work of the brands. So that means we need banks and finance. We need investors. We also need the NGOs. We need the media. And we need regulators to make it even more attractive for brands to support sustainability. And then there's one stakeholder group that I didn't mention, the customers. Can they be a driving force behind this transition to a more sustainable industry, Sebastian?
That's an important question. First of all, I've learned yesterday in the masterclass that lasting change starts with language. So let me try to not use the word consumer in the next couple of minutes, which will be very challenging for me. I've grown up in a world where it was used to consume goods and someone else is taking care of it at the end of use. So let me try to not use the word consumer. So what are the 4 most important headlines? The first one is awareness is up. 75% of all people we have asked are saying sustainability is extremely important or important for them. That's an amazing figure, and we've seen never such a high awareness in this industry. And this awareness is translating in changing purchasing behaviors. Over 1/3 said that they have already switched brands from one to another if they felt that the brand they were buying didn't act responsibly. And around 7% even said sustainability has become for them the most important purchasing criteria. In addition to that, we're seeing that people love to talk about the topic. Social media posts involving either the hashtag sustainability or stories around sustainability have grown 1/3 faster than social media posts in general. And the majority of those posts are involving positive stories. Consumers really love to share when they act responsibly, love to share when they have found brands that have come up with approaches that are different from the past. So, what's the source of all of this? I guess many of you are now thinking, this sounds too good to be true, and those guys have just interviewed the West Coast Patagonia tribe. We haven't. We have ran a survey across 3 continents, Europe, America, and Asia, and have involved people from different age groups and demographies. And yes, there are some notable differences across those. The US cares a little bit less, and younger people are obviously more aware than older. But nonetheless, none of those findings are contradicting the most important message. The majority of fashion users is considering the topic as important, and it's impacting their purchasing behavior. There are differences in importance. Some of the attributes have almost become table stakes. Fashion users think that topics like child labor, animal welfare are topics that brands need to comply to, no question asked. Other topics are more differentiators. Sustainable materials used, new approaches to recycling are more seen as differentiators that consumers want to learn more about and brands have to inform. Having said all that, we unfortunately still see that quality and look are the most important purchasing drivers. But sustainability has grown in importance. What does this now mean for brands? In our opinion, this is clearly an historical turning point, and we are very confident that this trend will continue. Sustainability has transformed from an afterthought to an important criteria in fashion users' purchase decision. Especially the younger generation will accelerate that trend. We believe that there's clearly an imperative that brands must address. Brands must talk about their sustainability roadmap to consumers. They should loud and clear promote the topic as one they deeply care about. Because the consumer will probably not be the driving force for this change, but the consumer will make deliberate choices. And we should not forget, the consumer has the power to destroy brands that do not act accordingly.
Thank you, Sebastian. So now we would like to invite up here on stage 2 brands that are both equally committed to sustainability, but have followed very different paths. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Everlane, Mr. Micheal Preysman, and the founder and Chief Creative Officer of House of Anita Dongre, Anita Dongre. Welcome. Thank you. So, Micheal, let's start with you and Everlane. Can you tell us about the journey you've been in on sustainability in Everlane?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here and listening to a bit of our story. Before we jump into the Pulse report, what I'll tell you is that Everlane launched 8 years ago with a basic principle that the fashion industry and retail in general really needed transparency and honesty to come to the forefront. Consumers really have no idea what they're buying, they don't know where things are made, and they don't know what's happening inside the factories. We launched with this transparency because we believe that if you educate people, you empower them with information, you allow them to make decisions, and then if in the end you're transparent, they hold you accountable. And we believe we need to be held to that accountability. So we started with transparency in pricing, and we tell you the cost of everything we make. Then we started transparency in factories, and you can actually see inside of our factories, and we were the first to build that. And now what we're doing is, call it 2 years ago, really brought sustainability and environment to the forefront of transparency in our organization. And we started that initiative in earnest just 2 years ago. When we think about the Pulse report, which you just so wonderfully introduced and talked about, I'll say on a broad level, we really look at it and say, we'd probably say we're at scale, or moving into scale. We're finding partners, we're going deep in the supply chain. But that's not a realistic way that we operate our business. We think about it from two fronts. One, bottoms up. What do you do for each product? And every product has a different story. And then two, top down. How do you build broad sweeping supply chain moves that can get the industry and ourselves to move forward within a short time frame? So from the bottoms up, I'll give you one example. Denim. When you take denim, it's one of the few products that you actually dye. Then when it goes into the actual factory, it gets washed out. What do you do with all the dye stuff? We partnered with Cytex, one of the world-leading factories in denim, to actually work on and tell the story of how denim can be washed out and the water can be so pure you can drink it. And I actually drank it. And then they take the dye stuff, detoxify it, turn it into concrete, and sell it or help orphanages build structures. And all of our denim is made in Cytex. And now we're partnering with Sanjeev, the owner of Cytex, to figure out how do we go cleaner all the way down through the mill and even the cotton. So that's how we think about bottoms up. And we're doing that with every product that we can. From a tops-down perspective, I think there's a huge danger in the industry, to be honest, about people saying, hey, by 2030, we're going to be here. That's not fast enough. So what we did is for virgin plastic, we said we're going to remove all of it by 2021. We're clearly on our way to do this in apparel, and we are no longer launching any products with virgin plastic in them. And then on footwear, we're trying to do the same thing, remove virgin plastic from all components within the footwear industry by 2021.
Thanks a lot. So we've been speaking a lot. Yeah, big hand. We've been speaking a lot about engaging the customers. I see you're wearing the thread shoe. I believe that's your newest, very ambitious initiative. Can you talk a bit about your experience of engaging your customers on sustainability issues?
Yeah. So I'm wearing our new sneakers, Tread by Everlane. They're $98 on everlane.com if you choose to buy them. But in all honesty, the story behind Tread is that sneakers are a unique market. They're a really dirty business, both on the front of the supply chain and then on the end of the supply chain. And they're one of the few that have such a mixed level of components. You have the upper and the sole itself, and they're totally different. And so managing that is challenging. We launched Tread by Everlane, which is a separate brand within the Everlane portfolio, to tell that story. It goes back to education. How do we educate customers and bring them along the journey? With Tread, we did 3 things that are unique. One, we tried to remove all the virgin plastic from the sole. In the industry, everything's trying to go lighter. It turns out when you remove virgin plastic, you go heavier. That's the reality, but we're okay with that. And we're 94% virgin plastic free on the sole. And it also means that we have to sacrifice certain quality. You can't get a pure white sole. That's the reality. Then on leather, we chose to use leather, but we wanted to do it in a factory that's sustainable as possible, and so our tannery. And so we partnered with a tannery that actually helps Cytex develop the technology for cleaning the water. So it's as clean as you can get for leather. And then the other issue, carbon. We do produce carbon. Everybody does. And at the end of the day, the impact to the planet is simple. We need to cut carbon emissions. So we did a full life cycle analysis, 45 kilograms of carbon produced by this shoe. It's heavy. If we hadn't used leather, it would be much lower. That's a sacrifice we made. But on the flip side, we offset every shoe. So built into our margin that you can see is a cost to offset this shoe. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is not good enough, and we've got a long journey to go. And so the purpose, again, around Tread is it brings the customer along in that journey. That next step as we think about and testing out vegan options, as we look at how do we partner with Tantech to reduce more, as we look at getting that sole to be 100% virgin plastic free, the customer will be brought along in that journey and will be held accountable to them through transparency.
Amazing. So looking 5 years ahead, where are you on the sustainability journey, and what would be the main challenges in getting there?
We spent a lot of time thinking about this because, again, I think when you think 5 years ahead, there's bottoms up, which is what's right for each product. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what we're doing for every product because it's a long list and not everything's going to be done. And then there's top down. What I think is the real issue, we'll get through the virgin plastic piece of it by then. But the real issue is not what we're doing. I think it's what consumers are holding us accountable to. So forget Everlane. It's really about, can we educate customers to come to Everlane and come to other brands and suppliers and say, I only buy products that are X. I only buy products that are carbon neutral. I only buy products that have zero water pollution. Whatever it is, that's the belief. And I think the challenge in that is that we need to remove words like sustainability from our dialect. We need to start owning specific metrics and specific beliefs and holding each other accountable and having an organization that holds us accountable. And that's the real challenge here for 5 years ahead.
Thanks a lot. And if you were to mention one thing that could really push this industry towards becoming truly sustainable, what would that be?
I don't know that there's one thing because it's a complex system. But I agree largely with what Paul says is that, and I don't know how to help everyone achieve this because we've had systems that have been built in place over 30, 40 years that are held accountable. But a difference can be made. I'm not going to name the brand, but there's a brand that I asked somebody, what was their worst day? When we interview people, I asked them, what's their worst day and what's their best day? And they said their worst day was when they came to the brand that they worked at and offered them for 5 cents more to transfer their entire plastic product that was virgin plastic to 80% recycled. And the answer that management said was no. 5 cents. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. And I think we need to be holding ourselves accountable for change.
Thanks a lot, Micheal. Anita, you started out small. You have a big business today. Can you talk about how sustainability has evolved as your company has grown?
Morten, started with 2 sewing machines in my balcony 30 years ago. Today, it's a very large company. We sell from 1,000 doors in India. We have a flagship in New York. And as the company has grown, it's important to keep sustainability in mind because I think when you're growing at this phenomenal pace, sustainability can be left behind. I primarily, the culture of my family is we are vegetarian. I have, in my 30 years, never used leather, fur, or any animal products anyways in our clothes. And we work from a very beautiful, eco-friendly, intelligently designed building in the outskirts of Mumbai. We've been serving vegetarian food and kind of been living a sustainable life. But with growth today, we've brought in a sustainability officer. We've joined the Sustainable Apparel Coalition at the beginning of this year. We are monitoring our sustainability efforts through the Higgs Index. All that is happening. We're looking into everything that we buy and how we can buy that sustainably. But I think what we're really passionate at House of Anita Dongre is women's empowerment and how do I transform my country. I come from a country of 1.3 billion people. 75% of India is in its villages. And while the cities have grown and not grown, I would say, in a planned manner, they've grown very erratically. So cities are crowded, polluted. I think it's the villages of India that truly are an example to sustainability because the villages of India lead a sustainable lifestyle. And it's my purpose and mission, and everyone who works with me today, is to take employment back into the villages of India. Being a woman myself, I understand how important it is for a woman in a village to be economically independent. She never had that opportunity in my country. And fashion becomes this amazing, wonderful tool I can use to go back and provide her employment. She can do that in the comfort of where she lives, probably in her home. If she's practicing her craft, we encourage it that she works from home. And in case it's a sewing unit, we are setting up centers in villages where she can literally walk to her place of work. So it's, to me, that is sustainability, and that's what we really, really feel passionate about.
Thanks, Anita. So besides being the founder, you're also the Chief Creative Officer. Can you talk about the role of designers and sustainability?
I think design is extremely important to sustainability because 2/3 of a garment sustainability factor comes from design and creation the garment. So educating our designers on sustainable fabrics to use, educating them on how best to not have wastage at the design stage itself. We are very, very diligent on that. And then again, where it comes to our purpose mission of the company is taking work back to the villages of India. There are very often times we just create a collection because there would be a certain group of craftspeople who needed work. So here it does not, we really use design for good over here. We do not create a design because it's time for a collection. We sometimes go back and create collections solely to provide a group of craftspeople work because each craftsperson has an individual style of what they do. So my designers have to work with agility sometimes to create these collections. So design is a very, very important role for sustainability, extremely important.
Thanks, Anita. And what about your customers? Is there a drive there for sustainability?
You know, in India, the awareness is growing, and I think conferences like this and the media is playing an important role and needs to continue stepping that up. There is a lot of confusion on what sustainability is for the consumer, but I think the consumer who's well-read and intelligent understands it, and it's growing in India. You can see that. I can see that in my stores day in day. They come in and they are wanting to buy into sustainability.
Thank you. And one final question. If you were to mention one thing that could accelerate this transition towards a more sustainable industry, what would that be?
I firmly believe that all companies today are monitored for material growth. There's so much focus on profit and loss, on material profit and loss at the end of the year, and you're measured completely by the kind of profits you made, cash profits you made. But I think today we need auditing agencies that literally come in and also test a company on, on your annual balance sheet, on your sustainability, on what did you do for what was your social and environmental impact at the end of the year. And I really think we need audit agencies who come in and do that.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you, Micheal. Thank you, Sebastian. Download the report, look at the microsite. It's sweet and short, very accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. This one.